It's not about motivation. Winners need discipline. Wake up and win today. Discipline comes from within.
Boxing King Media in association with Boxraw, Mr. Gareth A. Davies. I've got to ask you, Gareth, you got some flowers behind you. Who's giving you flowers this morning?
So there's always lilies in my house.
Is it? All right.
So yeah, it's always lilies in my house. Yeah, always.
Not being gifted.
But I'm always being gifted flowers. It's just the way it is. I'm sure there'll be a question about it. But no, I've always got lilies here. I've always got the red or white lilies here.
Good stuff. It is a nice day. That sun's a bit deceiving. It's not as warm as it looks, is it?
No, it's not. It's only about 7 degrees. But I am going to go for a big bike ride later.
All right. Okay. In your lycra, yeah, compression shorts.
Oh God, yeah, of course, lycra and compression shorts. Yeah.
Okay.
Once my housekeeper's gone.
Yeah, I noticed.
Once I've shut my fridge door with the hips, and what else is it?
Oh, there's that many. But I've actually got a couple more for you today as well.
Okay.
But I'll
Okay,
start
no
with
problem.
that. So we'll start with these, mate. So the fans reckon Gareth is the type of guy to say, "There's my hand and there's my heart" after a few tequilas and a night out. I don't know
I
that.
don't. There's my hand and there's my heart.
Whilst
Well, there you go.
whilst you're bladdered, basically.
There's my hand and there's my heart. I don't know what that means, but yes, I will try it when I'm out next.
And Gareth is the only is the type of person that will only speak to you by appointment.
Correct. No, that's absolutely the opposite.
Is it? Well, I made
Yeah,
it
I think so.
today. I was a bit late. What else have we got here? They reckon whenever I interview you, you're obviously in different parts of your house, and I think they were referring to this location last time. I think I might have been. No, in fact, it was your living room. Somebody put on there saying, "I bet that room has seen some sights."
Yes, that it has, but in my world, 60% of the stories that happen you never tell.
Ooh, intriguing. What is the most fascinating thing that's happened in that room? In fact, you've only just moved in, haven't you? So it's
Yeah, I've only been here 4 months. Yeah, I've moved out. Um,
not a lot then.
we'll save it for another day. Not a lot at the moment. There's still bits and pieces being finished off. But I, what's happened? No, it's only a couple of. Only had a little couple of parties at Christmas and New Year, but I'm waiting to have a proper housewarming once I got all the outside done as well. So but that will come. I tell you what, though, what I have had is a lot of water. That the water table's extraordinary at the moment. Out from the fields, it's so extraordinary, really. I've never known the amount of rain. Most rain on record for a very long time, I think. But yeah, I'm sure that'll be fascinating for your viewers.
Well, I think you've got an elite fan base that love knowing stuff about your personal life. If they've got any more questions, drop them in for the interview. So, I want to speak to you about this recent back and forth between Johnny Nelson and Eddie Hearn. In short, Johnny basically made some comments and said that the Ngannou Joshua fight was a fight that AJ shouldn't take. It's too much risk and not enough reward. And if he loses to him, everything he's done will be forgotten about, and people will remember him for losing to a guy in his second fight. And Eddie kind of came back and said, he should be thanking AJ because AJ gave everyone jobs at Sky, and he kind of pretty much saved British boxing. So just want to get your viewpoint on them comments from both of them about AJ saving British boxing and getting everyone jobs, and Johnny saying that the risk outweighs the reward in this fight.
Well, there was definitely a time when Anthony Joshua, Sky, and Eddie Hearn had an amazing relationship. All those pay-per-views. He was a superstar in the country, and obviously headed towards global stardom at the time. Didn't work out in America with his sojourn there with DAZN as well, aligning with when he'd signed with DAZN. Although I think Sky got that for some reason, didn't they? The Ruiz fight as well, from memory. But look, I get the back and forth. Eddie needs a new target, maybe, because he and Frank aren't popping at each other at the moment. He and Frank Warren, I think I don't agree with Johnny that it's a bad fight for. See, I just don't think his reasoning is right. That there's a huge truckload of cash for Anthony Joshua for this fight. It was made very quickly. My understanding is after obviously Joshua thought he was going to fight Wilder if Wilder beat Joseph Parker, but my understanding is that that fight was signed pretty much in the early hours of that morning after the day of reckoning. So he knew that was, obviously Eddie persuaded him. He was there. I think it's a really good fight for him. It's a really good fight for him to set a template and in comparison to what Tyson Fury did against Francis Ngannou. Obviously, there wasn't 30 minutes of data at the time for Tyson Fury and his team. I've just spent yesterday morning and early afternoon with Ben Davison in the Davison Performance Centre in Harlow. Joshua wasn't there yesterday, but I had a very long chat to him about the plans and what they're doing without knowing the exact strategy. But we talked about the pluses and minuses of Ngannou. Look, I think Johnny's entitled to his opinion, but I think he's wrong. I think it's a good fight for Joshua, puts him straight back in the title mix in the way that it's playing out in Saudi Arabia. It's a fight he could and should win. It's a fight that has jeopardy in it as well, which is good. It's a fight in which he could look spectacular. No one's put Francis Ngannou away. And if he can do that, he'll look amazing. And if he does that, all credit to him. Who should Joshua have been fighting outside Ngannou? There are lots of guys he could have fought. Could have fought Hrgovic. He could have fought Joseph Parker again. Trying to think of others. He could have fought Zhili Zhang. But the fight was spoken about on the night of the day of reckoning and signed, my understanding, or agreed. And so there we go, and we move forward. Did Anthony Joshua keep Johnny Nelson and those at Sky in a job? Yeah, he did. Sky was flying high with Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua. They were the most amazing fulcrum from, what was it, 2013 to 2018 and 19. So yeah, I mean, he did keep him in a job in lots of ways. Didn't keep him in a job, but he kept the profile of boxing very, very high at the time. Joshua was a superstar in our country after winning Olympic gold. So I think Eddie's right on this one. I think Eddie's right, and Johnny Nelson's entitled to his opinion.
What about the other argument in this as well? Because I've seen in recent years, Carl Froch has said that, he's the one that set off that Wembley stadium fight thing. AJ fought on that undercard, and who do we say actually kind of pioneered that movement to big stadium fights are back?
Well, definitely. Look, the Froch Groves fight in, what was it, 2014 was incredible. It was a punt at the time by Eddie Hearn, but he got it absolutely right. And by the time fight week came, it was such a grudge fight, so much enmity between them, that the draw to be there, I was there when, was so enormous that they did so. What was it, 80,000? How can I forget? 80,000 at Wembley, and it was an amazing night. I think I was working radio that night and writing, and it was a great occasion. But I think, yes, if that started the process, Anthony Joshua is the one that really put it on a conveyor belt. The Millennium Stadium in Cardiff filled out. What was it, Wembley? How many times Wembley? How many stadium fights he had? 5, 6?
I'm not sure. I won't be able to.
I think it was 5 or 6 stadium fights. It's Spurs, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Wembley 2017 was extraordinary against Klitschko. One of the greatest events I've ever been at. one of the greatest atmospheres. I've lost track of here this morning of how many stadium fights there were, but I've got it here now. Vladimir Klitschko, Wembley Stadium, because up to then it was mainly the O2 Arena, Manchester Arena, Wembley Stadium, Principality Stadium, Principality Stadium. So Wembley Stadium and Principality Stadium in 2017, Principality Stadium and Wembley in 2018, and then Tottenham Hotspur in 2021. No, I think, yes, Froch and Groves began it, but Joshua cemented it. And then with the return of Tyson Fury, it just created that kind of back and forth. And obviously we wanted to see those two men in the ring together. Anthony Joshua is definitely one of the reasons for the resurgence of boxing in the UK in the last 10 years. No question. Resurgence and growth.
The other thing I want to speak to you about, Gareth, is the we'll stick on the same subject, Johnny Nelson. I spoke to Spencer Fear on earlier on, and he, we talked about, the term company men, and he basically said that, obviously Johnny wasn't as ruthless before. Now he just doesn't care what he says. He'll just speak from his heart. But do you think there's an element for like commentators to kind of praise the home fighters, or do you think they all speak from the heart across all the channels? I won't single anyone out here, but Sky, The Zone, BT. Do you think there's an element of the way they have to kind of speak highly of the home fighter, and if so, should they be doing that?
I think that does happen at times, and I think there is a kind of. I just think it's psychological. There's a push towards the favorite, or the guy that's maybe the promoter's rising star. Yeah, you do get that a little bit, but I'm not going to point the finger at anyone doing that. Johnny Nelson's a great pundit. I don't always agree with him. I don't think he always gets it right, but he's a great pundit. And what I will say is he knows the sport inside out. I covered his career. He was a phenomenal boxer, and he knows the nuts and bolts of the sport. When I think what does happen, and you won't, I'm going to turn this back on you, because what you're doing right now is getting me to comment on them, which creates a headline, which then, but that's what's happening. And that is what's happening. It's kind of like, the YouTube channels.
Talking topic.
Yeah, but listen, the YouTube channels do a great job of promoting boxing. There's no question about that, and it's great fun, and a lot of people consume their boxing news now through social media and through the YouTube channels. So there's nothing wrong in it, but it's moved the dial a little bit. That to get a headline on your YouTube video, you want to comment on something that's been a comment on someone saying something about something. So, and I get that, and that's how you spin a story. It's old school journalism in lots of ways, tabloid journalism, or any kind of journalism, and it's fine.
I can't speak about the other channels, but ideally, I try not to. We're trying to speak to like the headlines are always kind of factual. I'd like to think, but kind of.
No, but it's not. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is you're getting me to comment on Johnny Nelson and Eddie Hearn when it actually has nothing to do with boxing. But around and about, it doesn't have anything to do with what's going on in boxing. It's just personalities disagreeing. I don't mind answering the question.
I want to get your opinion. Who do you agree with?
What on?
Yeah, so is basically the question was, is the risk higher than the reward for AJ? And I think you've kind of said no, it's not. I think you've said there is a big reward there. So are you basically saying
there's a huge reward? There's a huge reward. I don't.
Yeah.
Johnny's just taken a stance on it.
Yeah. Then you also pretty much confirmed that AJ did say British boxing. So you did answer the both questions. That was a question.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying that there is a point to it. That there is a. I mean, what I want to bring it back to is not the arguments between people, but the argument of whether within boxing, whether that's the right thing or not. I think it is the right thing for Joshua to fight Ngannou right now. Well, as soon as that fight was announced, I think there was an appetite for it. I think there was as I've said a couple of times in several interviews, the biggest issue is going to be if Ngannou wins, and there is a slight chance he wins, then should he be fighting for the undisputed title? Is that right? And that will be an almighty debate in boxing if that happens. There'll be a lot of people, I imagine, strongly disagreeing with it. That and I spoke to Mauricio Suleiman about this the other day, about him ranking Ngannou at number 10 in the World Boxing Council rankings, and he said we have rules within our organization. It's not because he just looked good against Tyson Fury, but it's the fact he got a split decision against the lineal heavyweight champion, our WBC champion. But we always take into account their record in the combat sport they're coming into and what they've done in that sport. Like they've world ranked Muay Thai fighters before and kickboxers before. So there's no it's not a precedent. It's happened before.
I'll move on to another slight debate. But I'll ask you, Gareth, after Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, who do you think is the biggest name in British boxing? Who's third? Just keep one.
Should be obvious in my head, shouldn't it?
Well, I'll give you a couple that
well, it could be Conor Benn.
Hmm.
It could be Chris Eubank Jr. Biggest name, biggest gates, biggest draws. It could be Anthony Yarde.
Well, I'll tell you, you've got the two out of the three names that I was hoping you was going to say. So we spoke to Tunde Ajayi a few weeks ago.
Josh Taylor.
Yeah. Tunde basically said Anthony Yarde is the third biggest name after the two heavyweights because his viewing figures on YouTube for his fights are in the millions compared to, like, he compared Boatsi's fights and he compared Callum Smith's fight with Beterbiev, and obviously Yarde's fights are in the millions on YouTube, and even when he's fought unknown opponents, they've done 500,000 plus. But Eddie's saying that it's Conor Benn. So I just wanted to know who you thought, and also how do we kind of argue that? Is it based on ticket sales? Is it based on viewing figures? Is it based on social media following? There's so many arguments to it.
I think in pure news terms, I think Conor Benn's the bigger story. But I think when you hear that Anthony Yarde's fighting, you want to watch because he's got an exciting style. He's been in 2 world title fights already, both thrilling, against Sergei Kovalev and against Artur Beterbiev. There's a fascination in news terms with Conor Benn and that elevation to a different level because of the controversy around the clomiphene tests and how it's been handled, and the back and forth in the media and the back and forth on radio, and Conor Benn's stance that he took, Eddie Hearn's vehement defense of him. So that's a big story. In boxing terms, I'd say Yarde above Benn, but when you look at the names of those 10 names that are being lined up to face him, from was it Danny Garcia at the moment to Gervonta Davis to to all these other guys that want a bit of him, I think it's probably Conor Benn.
Do you think any of these, because we've seen a lot of names get linked with Conor, and Eddie's been dropping so many names from Gervonta, Teofimo, Ryan Garcia to you name it, Keith Thurman, Pacquiao, Amir Khan, Kell Brook. Obviously, we haven't seen any of them names materialize. Do you think there's any legs on any of this, all these name dropping, or what do you think's going on?
Well, I think they're serious about Danny Garcia, who's obviously, I think he's 154 now. He's like middleweight, isn't he? So that he's a viable opponent. I mean, Gervonta Davis apparently has turned down a huge offer. Again, he's taking a big risk against a much bigger fighter, but much bigger man. And that's understandable. Mario Barrios, I think, is a potential opponent as well. I think Conor Benn would fight anyone. frankly, but it's how Eddie manages him at the moment and promotes him into the right fights. And 2024 is a very important year. And you know, we're now approaching March and we still haven't got a resolution on this appeal, which is very odd to me. Eddie keeps saying every time he speaks, he says a couple of weeks.
Well, then it says that the appeal's been heard and they're waiting for a decision.
Yeah.
When do you think that'll be? I don't. Do they have a time limit on when they've got to announce?
I think Eddie said this week at the Taylor Catterall press conferences it's going to be 2 more weeks. So there's a terrible habit of these things dragging on and on and on that needs to change. And hopefully we get full transparency afterwards with the result. If he gets his license.
What do you think will happen with that? Do you think they'll?
I think he'll be exonerated. I think he'll get a backdated ban potentially. And I think we'll see him out in the UK in the summer with a British license.
Will the ban be based on not fighting in the UK? Because obviously he's fought twice since. So would they come into account?
Well, he hasn't fought under a British license, and that's what they want. They want a British license for him to fight in the UK. Maybe he fights under US license, but he still needs the agreement of the Boxing Board of Control to have a fight here. But it would make sense for him to get a British license back if he can.
Okay. The last thing, Gervonta Davies, you touched on it there. Do you think that was maybe his way of just kind of going back to Al Heyman or whoever else, saying, "Well, this is what I've been offered. Can you better it?" Do you think that was an element of that in that?
I think he's got a very good deal with those guys. No, I think it's a sensible fight not to take for him right now, and obviously, it's one that might happen down the line if he's at 140 for a while and successful. And has a fight at welter eventually, but you know he's in his own lane at the moment. If we are to believe the accuracy of these things, that fight with Ryan Garcia last year, apparently he had $40 million gross. Have you heard that figure?
No.
That's what I heard. It's an awful lot of money, so he can very much pick and choose the fights he wants, and you know. Why risk it at the moment? Conor Benn doesn't have a world title. He might not want to associate with that at the moment. As I say, he's a man who's, you know, naturally 12 pounds heavier than him. So it makes sense not to take the fight. Love to have seen it. Don't get me wrong, but it makes sense.
Slight interruption there, Gareth, but I appreciate your time, and then hopefully I'll catch you probably in Riyadh next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want you to know that I caught up with Thomas Carter yesterday at the Ben Davison Centre as well. He's now sparring with Joshua. He had been sparring with Fury. Had a little interview with him that'll play out on TalkSport on Fight Night tomorrow. And he was there moments before. He was the guy sparring with Fury, of course, before the eye was cut. Minutes later, he'd done about 50, 60 rounds with him over the course of 3 or 4 weeks. Said Fury was absolutely on top form. This half of the year for me is one of the best years I can ever remember for matchups being made. I've said it a few times now. If 2024 carries on like the first 6 months, it could be one of the great years in boxing history.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
More fights to be made as well. Gareth, as always, appreciate your time, and I'll let you crack on and enjoy your Friday afternoon. Cheers, brother. Speak to you soon. Cheers.
I got a question for you. Where can discipline take you? Discipline points you towards your goals.